to our first session about RDA. Ray Schmidt is the manager of cataloging metadata for Wellesley College's Library and Technology Services. Ray catalogs Wellesley Music Library's sound recordings, videos, and scores, and he assists in reference and circulation services at the Music Library. He is currently serving on the RDA Implementation Task Force and on the Authorities Subcommittee of the Music Library Association's Bibliographic Control Committee. Dana Tarpanow, head of cataloging and metadata services at Central Connecticut State University, has been a cataloger for print and non-print materials for over 15 years. She especially enjoys the challenges that come with cataloging unusual formats. She's an active member of the Connecticut Library Association for Library and Collections and Technical Services, and served as a test participant of OCLC on the OCLC MLA U.S. National Library's RDA test project. Damian Eisminger is a technical services librarian at the New England Conservatory, a position he has held since April 2007. Damian graduated with a Bachelor of Arts summa cum laude from DePaul University in 2000 and earned a master's degree in library science with music specialization from Indiana University in 2004. Damian currently serves in MLA as the chair of the Authorities Subcommittee of the Bibliographic Control Committee. He is also a member of the BCC RDA Music Implementation Task Force, which is responsible for recommending best practices for using RDA to catalog music materials. Damian is also involved with the planning and presentation of an RDA pre-conference at MLA annual meeting this coming February in San Jose, California. In addition to his current positions in MLA, he has served as a member of the BBC Working Group on Work Records for Music and presented at the session RDA in Practice, Getting Ready for Implementation at the 2009 MLA annual meeting in Chicago. Damian is also a member of the Music OCLC Users Group, where he has served on the executive board as secretary and newsletter editor from 2010 to 12, and as a member of the program committee in 2009. He has also been a participant in the NACO Music Project since 2007. So I'm going to ask Ray to come on up and we'll get started. We'll let each of the presenters give their talk, and at the end we'll have some time for questions.
Today I'm going to give you all a brief background on RDA, what it is, where it came from, and talk about some of the concepts associated with it, and give some examples of what you can expect to see. RDA, Resource Description and Access, is a product of the Joint Steering Committee for the Development of RDA, generally called JSC. It is a descriptive cataloging standard, and it is meant to replace AACR2. The Library of Congress's business case for implementing RDA cites some of the factors driving the more transformative aims of RDA that are beyond simply tweaking AACR2 into an AACR3. These include the need for a standard that enables greater use and flexibility in the digital environment, better describes formats beyond printed monographs and serials, enables the descriptive metadata to be used in the linked data world, and supports data sharing within and beyond the library community. And finally, is non or less Anglo-centric. Work began on RDA in 2004. After several drafts and reviews, RDA was published in the RDA Toolkit in June 2010. At that point, that test period was initiated, and as you've heard, day one is March 31st, 2013, and that is the date that all catalog records newly created at the Library of Congress will be produced according to RDA instructions. But in another sense, day one is already long past. During the test period, over 10,000 bib records were added to the OCLC WorldCat database. And some of these records are in your catalog, even if you haven't adopted RDA yet. I was going to call this presentation RDA Records in Your Catalog Now. Kind of sounds like an infection or something. What I've done here is boil it down to a few concepts that a lot of principles went into the making of RDA. You could almost say too many principles, but these are some of the ones that I think you can expect to sort of will be visible as you look at RDA records in your catalog. The representation principle, take what you see. I also think there's a kind of take what you get principle in there too, because it involves taking what you get in records from other sources like publishers and vendors now and not fussing with them as much. Principle of common usage, which really I think of as simply being understood, which is a nice thing. More precise physical description. And yet there are about a zillion fussy, twisty, catalogery things that I'm not going to tell you that today, because I want you all to be very happy. And another aspect would be showing types of relationships between works and between works and their creators. And to talk about that, we need to talk about verb a little bit too. Some examples of the representation principle are that you'll see fewer abbreviations, no catalogers applied Latin. So things like and three others instead of et al, or publisher not identified instead of SN, things like that. And some music terms arranged and unaccompanied will be spelled out instead of abbreviated. But we're being somewhat sensible about it and keeping things like this number, SATP, and thematic index, those numbers in their abbreviated forms. Perhaps a big one is the no more rule of three in the card catalog environment. We limited the number of access points to generally from 1 to 3. Now, creators and contributors, there's really no limit to the number that you can add in a catalog record. And capitalization, well, there are more options now, and these are two non-music examples from Wellesley's catalog that I chose particularly for their ugliness. It's really, the uppercase and lower cases are freely mixing these days. It's like, there's just kind of not a lot of sense to it there. The top one is a book, second, this is a contents note from a DVD, and kind of yuck. But at the same time, if you think about it, like catalogers spend a lot of time agonizing, especially cataloging world music or foreign language materials, being unsure whether something should be capitalized or not. And the fact is, this is probably exactly what it looked like on the video. So I think the thing is, you just have to kind of get over it and realize that it's all keyword searchable. It's all just a couple of instances of common usage, some terminology. We used to say 59 pages of music for printed music for solo performers. Now we're treating it like other scores. It's just one score, 59 pages. And we're using the term study score instead of literature score. Terminology for types of carriers. We're now saying audio disc, etc., instead of sound disc. And there is the option to add information in encoding formats using words CD audio, SACD, and MP3. So. I don't know how important it is to everyone, but it's something I think people will see pretty easily, is that the general material designation is being replaced with content, media, and carrier types. Content is the form of communication through which a work is expressed. Media, the intermediation device, if any, needed to experience that work. Carrier is just what it sounds like. Just some randomish examples. What we're used to seeing, the old general material designations were what you'd see in the title field. That won't be in the title field anymore. You'll see these in 3 different fields in the record. I'll show you the marked fields. The top one is a book, second one is an audio recording, and unmediated. We don't need anything to read the book, and the book is a volume. Again, the sound recording, you have performance music, audio is the media type, and audio disc is the carrier. And the score is very similar to the book. It makes sense. It's notated music, but like a book, it is unmediated and it's a volume. And this brings me to an important point about RDA for catalogers, is that it's time to think about how you actually want to display some of the new data fields that you'll see in RDA. So that's the top part there is the example I just showed you of the sound recording. And this is what we're doing right now, at least at Wellesley, in the public display, is we're using repeated description field. The first one is for the standard physical description you're more used to seeing already. And we're stringing together the other three in a single line just to keep things from being totally cluttered. You may also choose not to display that second line at all if you want, but you could simply index those fields to help scope your searches if you want. Another example of a new physical description is a note for the form of notation. Typically, that would be staff notation. That form of notation is, interestingly, in the 546 field in MARC, which is right now a language note in most of your catalogs. It is in ours, it's labeled language. So you may want to go back and change that label to language or notation if you want to think about it now. So on to Ferber. I wanted to just present you with what I consider two really useful documents around Ferber. The original report on functional requirements for bibliographic records was published in 1998, the one on the left. And I think everyone should read it. I think that, well, it's 142 pages long, but I guarantee that by page 47 you'll be going, oh wait, I get it, it's okay. But if you don't have time for that, absolutely read Barbara Cole's Ferber. It's 8 pages. It's from 2004. I still think it's the most useful way to get a grip on it, get a grasp of it really quickly. And both of these are freely available on the web. Now, catalogers need to know about Ferber for RDA, but public services librarians should also know about Ferber because it's a useful way, especially for music librarians, to talk about what we want. Ferber is a conceptual model of the bibliographic universe, and it's an entity relationship model. There are 3 groups of entities in that: bibliographic, people, and subjects. These entities all have attributes, and these entities all there are relationships between all the entities. But sort of the way I think it's helpful to think about is that Ferber helps us talk about what we want the catalog to do. We want it to catalog to show us all the works created by or associated with a person. We want the expressions of that same work, whether they're scores, recorded performances, arrangements, translations, etc., all to be clustered around that work so that we can see them all in a fairly easy fashion. We want to be able to see all the manifestations of the same expression. So we want to know all the published editions that are available of any particular expression. And we want to know about the items. We want to know what's checked out, what's circulating, what's on off-site storage or something like that. We want to know about all the different items, the item information in our libraries as well. And those are the 4 entities, bibliographic entities in Group 1 in Ferber. We also want to know about related works, adaptations, improvisations, and works about the works we're interested in. Another way of looking at it here, so we have the work New Dance by Joan Tower. and have given us the two most typical, perhaps, kinds of expressions, although there are many other possibilities. Say, performed music and notated music as expressions of that work. Within performed music, you can have a manifestation. CRI published a recording of this in 1985 as an LP, one of the last probably. And because turned right around and published it again 5 years later as a CD, but those are, the LP and CD are two different manifestations of the same expression. And then you can have different items again in music libraries and all. So notated music, the published edition is by Associated Music in 1987. A few different ways to think about this is that manifestations and items are in the physical realm. Catalogers, generally speaking, use the item in front of them to actually describe mostly the manifestation. They're talking about something that's true. They're describing something that's true about that copy in every library, or every item in a published run. Whereas expression and work are basically in the abstract. A lot of people say, well, think of the work as the thing that's inside the composer's head. I don't like that. Things aren't in here. So, to me, the way I think about it is, you don't even need the concept of a work until you have two expressions that you need to relate those to. And so, really, what the work is the commonality between the two things. And it sort of works that way to go through it all the way down to the tree. Another interesting thing about Ferber is it asks about, on the expression level, arrangements are a kind of expression. Something is a work, and arrangement's still the same work. It's just arranged for different instruments or whatever, but arrangements can begin to stray, and people get creative, and things become an adaptation instead of an arrangement, and they essentially become a new work. And that's always a troubling question for catalogers, at least, is when does an arrangement become an adaptation? AACR2 dealt with this to a certain extent, but RDA goes into it in more detail and presents us with 5 categories of adaptations of musical works. One I think is the most interesting is D, because it's new, and that is that essentially jazz performances and improvisation are actually a kind of adaptation, a kind of new work, as opposed to simply a mere performance. And so in these cases, the creator of the work is actually the jazz performer, not the composer. Ferber and RDA are about clarifying relationships between creators and works, and I'll just give you two very different examples of how you might see this. It is now possible to add relationship designators to the string of a personal name. You can see recordist, compiler, and writer of added commentary are all relationship designators. For librettos, published librettos, separate from an actual recording or score, the creator of that is now would be the librettist. Makes sense, doesn't it? But we used to simply tack libretto onto the end of the uniform title for an opera. So you can see that difference. And finally, I just want to throw in a few things about authority records that are kind of interesting in new editions. And the interesting issue is that the gender of people, you may or may not be able to tell in old authority records if a composer is a woman. You have to look for clues like in the note field that say her, or maybe that she was married and her name changed. But in RDA, this is very clearly its own data element. And I can say at Wellesley College, this women's college, this matters to us. great deal, but I think it's pretty important for researchers in general. And there are other data elements as well. You see birth and death dates and dates associated with places of birth and death of the composer, and also fields for that music is a field of activity, composer is the occupation, and the gender. And I present these, you might see these as all being sort of aimed for a linked data world later on, but I think it's not impossible for our current library systems to utilize some of this data as well if people get creative and think about it. So I put that out there for you all to think about. And I think that some of the things that are cool about RDA and authority records right now are only cool if you actually go back and change a lot of old records too. So those are some of the challenges. And it really just brings me to my final point is what we need to think about now in our MARC-based library systems. We can expect to see AACR2 records sitting beside RDA records. We're not going to automatically make wave magic wand and have them all be RDA now. And even I think the records themselves are going to end up being hybrid in some cases. But what we need to think about is how our integrated library systems will handle the new data elements. The catalogers will make sure that all the new data is loaded into the catalog, but I think it's up to everyone in the library to have a wider discussion about how we want to index these data elements, whether we want to make them searchable, and how we want to display them. So talk to your cataloger about RDA. And then just to end, just a few quick recommended resources. The article by Kathy Glenn in Notes March 2012 is a great start. You read that, you'll be in good shape for a while. And that's pretty much it.